Welcome back to another installment of History in 5 Minutes or Less. Social structure is a pretty important aspect of any civilization. The Encyclopedia Britannica defines it as the distinctive, stable arrangement of institutions whereby human beings in a society interact and live together, blah blah blah. Ancient Egypt was no different. Because the ancient Egyptians figured out agriculture a long time ago, society had an opportunity to separate its people into specific classes. I'm going to show you some of these classes of society that lived during the New Kingdom from about 1600 BCE to 1100 BCE. We call these types of social classes a social pyramid because there are few people at the top and many people at the bottom, kind of like a pyramid. We're going to take a peek into the lives of the pharaoh, government officials, priests, scribes, artisans, and peasants. Each level of society in ancient Egypt contributed greatly to the success of the civilization. These societal groupings were fairly rigid, which means there was little chance to move to a higher class. The Egyptians believed that their class system created a well-ordered society where everyone had a role to play in order to contribute to the success of the kingdom. At the top of the pyramid sits the pharaoh. This is the most powerful person in all of ancient Egypt. The pharaoh was the political, religious, and military leader of all the land. Pharaohs lived the life of luxury with large palaces and all the resources of the land because they believed that everything was theirs. Aside from the head honcho in charge, government officials belonged to the highest class of ancient Egypt's social pyramid. Their job was to assist the pharaoh. Government officials usually came from the pharaoh's family. Three of the more important government officials were the vizier, the chief treasurer, and the general of the armies. The vizier was the pharaoh's right-hand man and served as the chief judge in society. The chief treasurer's main job was to collect the taxes. And the general of the armies advised the pharaoh in matters of war and helped make alliances. Government officials also led lives of luxury and often attended lavish banquets. Priests were right below the government officials on the social pyramid. Priests were also powerful and highly respected. The high priest advised the pharaoh and oversaw all religious ceremonies. Temple priests were in charge of the temples all throughout Egypt. In these temples, the priest's job was to ensure that the god of the temple was taken care of. The priests also played an important role in the burial practices. They oversaw the embalming and mummification process. If these burial practices were not done properly, the dead may not have a good afterlife. Below the priests were the scribes. Scribes were pretty important because they were Egypt's official writers and record keepers. Only men were allowed to be scribes, and they came from all different classes. In order to become a scribe, you must attend scribe school and learn over 700 hieroglyphs. Scribe school was not easy, and beatings were common. Once out of school, scribes held various jobs that required writing. Scribes kept records of grain and food, recorded the government census, and kept track of the army's soldiers and number of enemies killed in battle. Artisans were on the next level down. Artisans were highly skilled laborers who created some of the most beautiful pieces of art in the ancient world. They rarely got the respect they deserved. Artisans generally specialized in a specific craft like carpentry, leatherworking, or sculpting. The most skilled artisans were stone carvers. They are the ones that created all the statues and engravings found around Egypt. Although artisans were the masters of their craft, the upper classes looked at them as common laborers. They were not too respected. Finally, the lowest and largest social class consisted of peasants. These people were the unskilled laborers of Egypt. Peasants grew the crops that supplied food to Egypt. They also helped build monuments during the flooding season. Since the peasants worked all year, they were allowed a reward at the end of the harvest season. They were allowed to gather as much leftover grain and keep it for themselves. Unfortunately, if a farmer's harvest came up short, they would be brutally beaten. So there you have it, a bunch of social classes during the New Kingdom of ancient Egypt. Although the classes had a very different daily lives, each class had its own role to play in society. Without these social classes, ancient Egypt could not have risen to an amazing civilization that it had become. Here are some sources and some photo credits.